Our move to an online format doesn't allow for a face-to-face opportunity for me to explain the intricacies of some of our upcoming assignments, one of which is our literacy history assignment. And you've already turned in part one, but as we move towards the end of the semester, I felt it might be beneficial for me to provide an audio that maybe explains some of the pieces and parts a little bit more specifically for you. You'll notice here the different parts that this short video will explain. And certainly, and I'll say this I'm sure again at the end, if you have any questions after reviewing this, please don't hesitate to contact me. You'll notice that most of these slides have a little bit more text than I would normally put, and that's because we have to do it in this format. But as you know, one of the things that I've highlighted throughout the course this semester is the idea that students bring different funds of knowledge, their ways of thinking about using print and oral language that's unique to their life, their background, their culture. And as you know, young children are far from blank slates. They come to school with many ideas and they have a lot to say. And we don't, unfortunately, as educators, always think to value those funds of knowledge that they bring. If you think about Donnie and what he brought to school, he had a lot of knowledge, but it wasn't connected to the traditional forms of literacy that his teachers were focusing in on. And so we need to keep that in mind as we prepare for teaching students to read or dealing with students in the middle grades that we're reinforcing their literacy in the form of intermediate literacy, and then also getting them into the different disciplinary forms of literacy. So as teachers, you'll have the potential to be an important person in the lives of your students. You will become part of their literacy history. And so this type of assignment is a good thing for us to practice so that we think through our own development and that of the person that we interviewed, and then more broadly to the lives of our students as well. This slide is probably one of the most important of this PowerPoint because it reminds you how important, how actually absolutely essential, as I note on the slide, this document is. And this is the rubric for the assignment. It explains the point value for each of the sections, but more specifically, it notes what each of the sections are that are a part of this, and what is expected for each section. Please make sure that you access it and you use it as a guide as you're completing the writing and then the finalizing of your draft that you'll submit. You can find this on our Blackboard page. If you go to the Blackboard page, if you'll remember on the left-hand side, there's a toolbar. Make sure that you look at the assignment guide link, and then inside there's a folder for literacy history assignment. And you will find this and the other documents I refer to on this PowerPoint housed within that folder. Okay, so part one is your history, and many of you have already submitted this for my review. My hope is to get you back the final notations from me so that you can continue to work on this section as you think about the final aspect or final project that will be turned in. The main idea here is for you to present a fairly comprehensive picture of who you are as a literate adult. How did that happen? How did you develop into this person that you are with regard to your personal literacy? Were there other people along the way that assisted in your development, encouraged or discouraged you, but are a part of your history? The main thing to keep in mind here is for the whole of the project, it's supposed to be written in sentence and paragraph form. I don't want bullet pointing where you list the question and then your response or that of your interviewee. I'd like it to read as a narrative, perhaps sort of like a story form. With regard to your personal history, make sure that you include at least 2 anecdotes or narrative descriptions that are important, sort of your memories If you have a particular idea in mind or something that you remember with regard to sitting on your mother's lap and perusing through books or that kind of thing, that would be one. So make sure that you share at least 2 of those. With regard to your interviewee's history, and I realize that the due date for this is coming up, you may have already written it. Feel free to submit what you already have, and I can provide feedback, or if you want to use this as a jump-off point to make some adjustments before your submission. As with your personal history, you get points just for submitting a fairly complete part 2. But I will provide some feedback so that you can tweak it and rework it, edit it as you're moving towards your final project. The key thing to keep in mind with regard to your interviewee's history is some key things like what their literacy use is at home, the types of reading materials they have at home, inside and outside the home and school as far as their experience, their earliest writing and reading, positive and negative memories that they have, the same types of things that you would have included in your own. Make sure that you keep that in mind for them. And remember that there was an ideal concept with regard to the type of person that you would interview. And I realize our current situation maybe has not allowed you to do that. But ideally what we were looking for is somebody who's not exactly like you. Somebody who's considerably older, a parent or a grandparent or a neighbor or somebody that you know that even in this environment you could call and get some information. Maybe it's a person that was raised in a different setting than you, an urban setting if you maybe are from a rural background. Someone who maybe is a different race than you, has a different first language than you, or was born in a different country. What we're trying to do is find someone who's a little bit different from you, or a lot of it different than you, that you could use to compare your story and theirs with regard to literacy development. And keep in mind, like your literacy history, it's not supposed to be a bulleted list of questions with answers, but rather a narrative, sentences, paragraphs, that type of thing that tells their story of literacy. Now, it's obvious when we're talking about a paper of any kind that your paper, this paper, should have a well-written introduction and conclusion. And I've just written a couple of notes here. I probably don't need to read through this. You guys have written a lot of papers from high school, junior high, high school, and into college, so you understand the basic format of a paper. But make sure that when you're thinking about your introduction, keep in mind that you want to tell a little bit about what the whole of your paper is going to be about, and this can happen in the form of your thesis statement. But you also want to grab the attention of the reader, maybe give them some generalized information about literacy or that type of thing, but something maybe to hook them or to grab their attention. And a conclusion, remember, is just that. It concludes your paper. Generally, a conclusion includes a brief summary of what you've covered in the paper. Sometimes it includes a restatement of your thesis statement. It may end or include a pertinent or powerful quote that has to do with the topic you've discussed, that type of thing. I've included a link here from another university that provides some good, succinct information about the writing of introductions and conclusions that you may find helpful. Okay. The other parts of the 2 other major parts of this assignment include a comparison of the histories, yours and the person you interviewed, and also a connection to course learning. So with regard to a comparison of histories, you should have a paragraph, a well-rounded paragraph where you're making several comparisons or contrasts between your history and that of your interviewee. Do you share a background? If your backgrounds are not similar, how are they different? Was your learning to read or write or any other aspect of literacy that you want to hone in on or you share as part of the histories, are they similar And if not, what are the differences? And highlight at least 3 different areas where you can share similarities and or differences. One of the things that I always love to look at is the next section, and that's the connection to our course learning. In this section, you need to think about the histories as they directly relate to or connect to topics or aspects of literacy that we've covered over the course of the semester. And I've noticed, I've included here on this slide, if you've noticed, the key topics that we've studied, just sort of a bullet pointed list there to help you remember the types of things that we've talked about. So if you are if you've interviewed perhaps your grandfather, and he shares with you that he didn't really enjoy reading, that was something girls did, or his sisters liked to read, but he preferred doing XYZ, that would be a good connection to our study of boys and literacy and the things that we learned, the articles that we read, and the things that we discussed in class. So what you'll want to do is make a minimum of 3 connections. If you look at the rubric, it tells you need to have at least 3. And as educators, obviously, we want to make sure that we're citing the resources, the sources that we've used to make these connections. So it might connect to the articles, it might connect to some of our class discussions as I noted them on our class PowerPoints or whatever that type of thing may be. But you're going to utilize APA citation. And on the next slide, I provide you the information that you'll need to know how to effectively and correctly cite the sources that you've used. Okay. In the past, you have probably used the MLA format because you probably wrote papers primarily in your English language arts class. And also maybe in your composition class here at the university. And so the MLA format is what is used under the College of Education and in any type of format or any type of connection to that world, so to speak. But as educators, we use the APA format instead. So for some of you, that will be a change if you've not already had opportunity to use this type of format. There is a really good site. It's my go-to, and I know a lot of other educators use it. It's called the Purdue OWL website, and I've included a link on this site. I think it just brings you sort of to the home page. You actually can use this site for MLA or APA, but you'll want to make sure that you're referencing the different things with regard to the APA format. Couple of things to keep in mind, and again, this is not new information to you. I'm sure you've had to do some type of research papers before where you've used citations and included a bibliography or that type of thing. So for this paper, you'll need to do the same. So for the 3 sources of information that you're going to use to support your 3 connections, you'll need to have an in-text citation, and that's where within the body of the paragraph, remember, you'll put the parentheses, and for APA, you use just the last name of the author, a comma, and then the year of publication, because that will directly connect to what you include with the complete citation of that source in your reference listing. Now, for APA, you don't put bibliography or works cited, it's just references. And the APA, or excuse me, the Purdue OWL site will give you, there's a whole sample paper there if you want to use that as an example. So as I considered what you might use within the body of this paper, I figured that probably you might reference the journal articles that we've read. And so I have an example of the format that you should use and then an actual example for both the reference page and also for the in-text citation. The other thing I thought you might probably reference more frequently is a PowerPoint that we had on a particular week on a particular topic. And so I did put the format and an example there, and the in-text citation is actually the same for both the PowerPoint and the journal. So you'll have access to this, and that maybe will provide a good guide for you. All right, we're almost done here. It's important for you to understand that I'm looking for a particular layout of the final paper This is the same layout or order that is shown on the rubric that we're using, but you should have an introduction. The interviewee's history is the first main point that you'll share. And then you'll notice that in between each of the other items, the personal history, the comparison of histories, the connecting to our course learning, that I'm asking you to have a transition statement. There's nothing more frustrating than reading, and you've probably experienced this as well, that the topic from paragraph to paragraph switches with no indication that there's a switch. So a good example, say, of a transition between the interviewee's history and your own personal history might be after you've written everything about the interviewee to say something along the lines of, we all have unique personal histories with regard to our literacy development. And just as X, naming the person, and don't forget to use a pseudonym. You probably shouldn't, or if you just want to use a first name, if it's John. So just like John had a unique development of literacy in his life, so my literacy development is unique to the setting and the context in which I grew up. Okay, and that would be a sample transition from one to the other. So I know that I'm moving from John's history to a sharing of my own. Okay, so keep that in mind. And as always, if you have questions on this, I've opened a Dropbox, or excuse me, a discussion board thread where you can put a comment there or a question there, or you can just send me an email and I'll respond as quickly as possible to that to help you. Okay, the last thing that we're going to do with regard to this paper is I want you to have an opportunity to do peer review. And I know some of you, I can hear the collective, oh, really? But I do believe that there can be some value in this, and it's something that we as educators need to learn to develop, because we'll probably have opportunities to review perhaps articles that appear is submitting for publication in a journal or that type of thing. And we definitely want to be able to read a paper and look at it and find key things, strengths that we can accentuate, and also some areas that for improvement. And so obviously as teachers, we're going to be doing that a lot with our students, but we should be able to do it as well with our peers. And for me, if I get a good peer review from somebody, it provides me some key points that I can utilize as I'm doing my rewrite of my paper. So I want us to do this. You will notice in that same folder on the Blackboard page for literacy history assignment, you will also find, and I have a snapshot of it there, the peer review template. And basically what I did is I took the rubric and then put some guidelines for you and gave you some space. It is a writable document, so what I'm going to do is I will assign you a peer whose paper you will review. And you'll notice that there is a grade column, but keep in mind that grade column is not for you to grade your peer. You're simply providing them feedback in the spaces where there's opportunity for you to do so. Make sure that you highlight what they've done well. Don't just put this section is good. What is good about it? Remember to look at what the rubric says, and I have a simplified version of that to the left-hand side. Look at what the specification is for that section. If you're doing the section, you're reviewing the section, say, on their connections to our coursework, and you notice that they only have 2, but the requirement is 3. What you can say is, oh, I really liked the connection you made between your person that you interviewed and the section on boys literacy. But I noticed that you only have 2 of these and you actually need 3. You might consider a connection with regard to XYZ, whatever you've noticed within the paper. So you're providing them more than just a pat on the back or a slap in the face. You're actually providing them some information that they can use. So make sure that you keep that in mind. As I mentioned, the grade column is for me. You will not be getting a grade on the rough draft, the completed rough draft that you turn into me. It's only going to be for feedback. What you will be getting a grade for is how well you review the other person's page. So that grade column is for me. not for you. So make sure that you don't put any grades in that section. I'll take care of that when I look at the review that you've provided for your partner. Now, I provide you a person's name. You're supposed to review John's paper, okay? So you and John will have to connect. There's a list of all the emails of our classmates. If you look on the left-hand toolbar, you'll see where it says emails, and you'll be able to find your peer and send them a copy of yours, and they will send you theirs, okay? So you could complete the review. Now you have this completed template. What do you do with it? Well, you send it back first to the peer whose paper you reviewed so that they have that as a resource as they rewrite. The second thing you need to do with that template is upload it to the discussion, or not to the discussion board, I'm sorry, to the assignment Dropbox so that I can see the type of job that you did for your review. Now there's always a question. What if someone submits to me a rough draft that has not been completed? How do I proceed? In the section, say maybe that they didn't complete their conclusion yet. So what you just need to put is NA for not applicable. And then you might still give some insight on what they might include based on the paper that you read. You've not completed this, however, I would recommend including this, this, and this in your concluding paragraph. That way, I see that you've made an effort even though they have not completed the section. So keep that in mind. Email me with any questions that you would have on this. Okay, as a final thing, I just wanted to review due dates with you because I have made some adjustments to this. So please note that there are date changes here. Part 1 of this assignment has already been submitted. If you have not had opportunity or just have not submitted one prior, but you would like some feedback from me, that Dropbox is still open. Please submit that as soon as you can. Due Sunday, just in a couple of days, our Part 2 is due, your interviewee's history. And I did mention if you needed another day or two based on the things that I've noted here, please take that extra time and I would be happy to accept it even though it's going to be a day or two late. Due on Friday is your completed full draft, and you need to upload that to the assignment Dropbox for my review, and you also need to make sure that a copy is exchanged between you and your partner. I will upload a list no later than Friday, but probably prior to that, to let you know who your partner is going to be for the peer review. Now I'm going to give you a full week to review and return your partner's paper. My suggestion would be that you do it sooner rather than later so that you each have an opportunity to finalize things before the completion, which is May 1st when it needs to be updated, or excuse me, uploaded. Remember that what you'll be doing is returning via email to your partner the template that you've completed, and you're also going to upload that to the assignment Dropbox. Now, that does not mean that once you've submitted your final that you can just sit around and wait. You need to be working on this on your own while you are waiting for feedback from both your peer and from myself. What you're going to want to do is pull out that rubric again, review your paper. You might ask somebody else, maybe a family member or someone that you trust with regard to sharing your writing. You might want to share it with somebody that you know that you think could also provide you additional feedback. So keep working on it. Once you get your peer feedback back and my feedback, then tweak it for the final draft and then upload it on May 1st. If you have any questions on this assignment, please contact me, and happy writing.